Hi, so it looks like it's time to make a few more videos, and what we're going to do for this one is create the orthographic views of this guy in CAD by setting up layers and thinking through the dimensions. This is similar to one of the worksheets in the book. I'm not going to do anything exactly like the book, but hopefully this is close enough that you'll get the right idea for it. The first thing to do is to really familiarize yourself with the object you're trying to draw. So if we were going to dimension this out, and you can do this on a piece of scratch paper, but the orthographic views we're after, we have this kind of long, almost a small letter H coming over here on the side. So here's one of our views. And notice the dashed lines. These are hidden lines that we'll be creating. We'll have a whole layer that's just devoted to hidden lines. So that's if you're looking through a surface at like a hole behind a surface, then you would see it as a hidden line. So the circle cylinder shows up as a hidden line, as does these rectangular cutouts on the top. So we have a slot that goes all the way through. You can see from the top how those cutouts are going underneath it. And then we also have a cutout that just goes kind of halfway through. So the letter T is inscribed on the bottom of this thing. So the first thing, just really familiarize yourself with that object and make sure you understand what everything is trying to convey here. Next step is to sketch in dimensions of this. So for us, we have an object that is, we have 2 plus 5, 2 plus, so this is 5, 6, 7, 12. We have something that is 12 long, and that goes for the top view and the side view. And then if we see how high it is, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's 8 at its highest. And then for the depth of this thing, we have something that's 2, 2, and 3. So 4, 5, 6, 7. So we're going to make something that is just kind of get the overall rectangular shape of it. You can think of it as either taking the object on a CNC machine, and maybe you start with a solid rectangular block and then you carve chunks away from it. Or you can think of it as kind of a layered cake and you make it one layer at a time. Either way, the largest dimensions of this thing, so if it would start out as a solid rectangle, would then be this 12 by 8 by 7. So kind of keep those dimensions in your mind and have that paper in front of you. Okay, the first thing to do, I'm going to set up layer properties. And this is where I'm going to have a maybe a solid layer, a construction line, a hidden line, and maybe one for dimensions. So for construction line, I'm going to make this one, I like to use these bright colors because they show up well on the background. And for the line type, go ahead and load all of those. And depending on the size of what you're creating, you need different sizes of dash. I'm going to use this 0.5 size and then say OK. So that'll show up as dashed. Hidden lines, I'll go ahead and make that maybe bright yellow. And there's some standard line types for that too. So here's my hidden line. It's a dashed line too. And let's see, we have dimensions, we have our 0 layer, Maybe dimensions I'll make just kind of a light gray. And dimensions you usually do in the layers, but every now and then you want to put some notes in just for yourself. And this one we'll leave as just an extra if we happen to need something a little bit different. Okay, so now we have our layers saved. And it's always good practice to save this thing. So I'm going to save as, I'll just call it example. If you save as a DWG file, you are saving the drawing. If you save as a template, that will save your layers and your layout, your dimension styles, so you don't have to reset all that stuff over and over again. But get in the habit of saving your work often. You will have DWG and DWT templates. The T is a backup file. You can change that into DWG and get back your work if you accidentally do something horrible to mess it up. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to start with my construction lines, and I'm going to give myself a grid for creating these 3 orthographic views. So I'm going to create 3 rectangles for the 3 main views on here. By the way, I took this off of just using my snipping tool. So I just said edit copy and Control V into CAD. And then I have my notes in front of you. You probably want your notes handwritten on a piece of paper in front of you, but for this one, I'll just have it here. So I'm also going to make sure that my coordinate system is where it should be. So I'm making that my world coordinate system. So I have X going to the right, Y going up, and I'm also making sure that my dynamic mode is off. So if I start up a command and I have something going on by my cursor, that is dyne mode, and that means all of the dimensions you put in are with respect to the last point you drew, which sometimes is kind of nice to have that. Versus if I have that off, and you can say dyne mode -3 or 3 to turn that on or off, then I'm typing in my command line, not by my cursor, and the coordinates are with respect to my user coordinate system, not with respect to the last point. If you're missing points down here, this 3 bars, this is where you get like your coordinates showing up, which is very handy. The dynamic input, which controls how you input commands if you're using the command line or next to your cursor. So kind of customize your work area here too when you're starting off. So you'll have your snapping tools here. You can turn your grid on and off. You can snap to your grid or not. So customize, get used to all of the tools down here too. Your ortho mode might be nice when you're just drawing rectangles. So 90-degree angles, perfectly vertical and horizontal lines with ortho mode on there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and escape out of my commands. All of the commands you have, you can kind of see all of them by hitting this arrow, but usually you don't want that to clutter up your workspace. But just know that if you want that, they're there. Also, your undo, you can do lots of undos all at once instead of just 1 or 2. So that's kind of a nice record of your commands too. So I'm going to start by making these 3 rectangles. So my lower left-hand view, this kind of lowercase h that I'm going for, and what I have is 2.5 plus 2.5 plus 5 plus 2. So it's going to have a length of 12, and then I will have a height of 4 plus 3 plus 1, so a height of 8. So I'm going for a 12 by 8. So I'm going to start in the corner, 0, 0. And remember, you make rectangles by going from the lower left-hand corner to the upper right-hand corner. So the opposite corner from that is going to be 12 in the x direction and 8 in my y direction. So this is, and I'm in the construction line. If I want to move this to a different layer, all I have to do is click on the line, and then I can click on the layer that I want it in. So if I want to, you can always move things from one layer to another. And the layers are very handy for AutoCAD. This is different than some of the other CAD programs, how this is organized. It's made for civil engineering. It works well for electrical engineering as well, but it's a very nice organized way to have things. So right now I'm not drawing in any of the details, just the basic outline. Okay, so there's my lower right-hand corner kind of chair. Now maybe I want to draw the top view. So the top view is going to have a length of 12 and then a height of 7. So for this one, I'm going to start my rectangle command again. And instead of starting at 0, 0, so I'm at 0, 0. This was where I was at 0, 8. See my coordinates over here? The coordinates will not show up unless you have some kind of drawing command going. So here's 0, 8, and maybe I want to put a space of, I don't know, 2 or 3 behind it. So I'll go from 8 to maybe 10. So I'll say, I'll start at 10, comma 0. And you can always move these rectangles around too. So don't worry if you start somewhere wrong. So that would be x coordinate of 0 and a y coordinate of 10. And then I'm going to go to an x coordinate of 12 and then a y coordinate of 10 plus 7 or 17. And if you want to kind of keep track of a little bit of the dimensions, like I said, usually you dimension over here in the layout space after it's drawn. But if you want just a few coordinates, dim ord, that's dim coordinate, and it will tell you where you are. So I can put on just a few numbers. So here's my 0. Maybe I'll put my little ortho snap on. And I'm doing this just in my construction layer. So this is sort of just scratch note setting up the grid. If you're doing the same command over and over and over again, like dim ordinate, and maybe those numbers are a little bit small, so I can do dim style and pop up that size. So this is getting a little bit ahead into dimensioning, but it is kind of nice to have those numbers in front of you so you can orient yourself of what size everything is. So I'm just going to bump up that text size. I'm going to set my position. I don't need 4 zeros probably. So I'll go ahead, set current, close. So that bumps those ordinates a little bit larger. Dim ord, dim coordinate. So this is just putting on the coordinates of everything so that I can more easily kind of see where I'm at. Okay, so I've got a 12 by 8 box and then a 12 by 17 box. If instead of coordinates, if you want the actual length of lines, that would be the dim linear command. And I would grab the first point, the second point. So this box is 12 long and it's 8 high. So dim linear gives me the length of lines. So start by just creating kind of the basic outline of your shape. So I have one more rectangle to go. Can you tell what the dimensions of this lower right-hand rectangle is? So this would be the front of it. So it's going to be 3, 2, 2. So the side of the top is also the side of the side. So we're going to go with 7 along the base. And then for the height of it, that's this 4, 3, 1. So a height of 8 and a base of 7 for this last rectangle. let me go ahead, I'll show you the move command. So I'm going to make this rectangle starting at 0, 0, and then going over to our 7, 8. And then I'm going to use the move command to move it into place. So this rectangle, all 4 lines are connected because they're made as a rectangle. So I select my object and then hit enter. And then it wants my base point. I'm going to grab the lower corner 0, 0. So that's kind of how I have it grabbed. See how I have it grabbed? And now I'm going to type in the coordinates of where I want that base point to be. So if this is going out to a position of x equals 12, and I'm going to pop him out maybe another 2 or 3. So maybe I'll bring him to x equals 15 and y equals 0. So that would give me a good spacing between them. And you can always grab anything you want and move it around later on. Sometimes it's easier to just redraw something, and sometimes it's easier to put it in place. Okay, so a lot of these, we're going to line things up. So the height of this chair is going to kind of cross over, and then the back of this chair is going to shoot up. And for this, there's X lines and rays. So X lines shoot out in both directions. Let me just start up an X line. So I'm going to turn on my orthographic snap so I get perfectly horizontal lines here. And I'm going to just make some reference points. So where the bottom of this chair is, which it looks like it's up at a height of 4. So I'm going to say x equals 0, y equals 4, and make just a line that shoots across right at the height of where that chair is going to be, if that makes sense. Maybe I should resize my figure so that it will be more in line with what's going on here. Okay, so now I have a line that shoots across from my chair, and that's going to determine both of those lower views. Maybe I want to make another line that looks at sort of the back of that H shooting up to the top. Let me show you. So X line goes infinity in both directions. See, it just keeps going and going and going. A ray will shoot off in just one direction. So if I type in ray, this is another special kind of line. And for this one, I'm just going to worry about this distance of 2. So how thick sort of the back of that chair is. So I'll go ahead and start that at x equals 2 and y equals 0. And I'll shoot that up, and it'll just kind of help me get both of those views started. Okay, I also have these cutouts at the base, and those are both up 2. Let me see if I need to add a dimension there. Okay, so at the base, and for the worksheets, I think you're counting squares on this thing, but for this one, we're going to go up 2 for where that hole is. So I'll go ahead and make another ray, and this time I'm going to do x equals 0 and make it 2 high. So that's where all of those cutouts are going to pop up to. I have, let's see, the top. So we can start saying how tall the top is. So I have one lower than the top. So instead of going all the way up to 8, I'm going to go to 7. So 0, 7. And shoot that across. So this is kind of the first step, is to give yourself a grid that will allow you to kind of locate everything easily. Okay, so how about a line that starts at x equals 7, 5 plus 2, because there's some features going on there. So I'll say ray 7, 0. So there's some more stuff going on there. And then our circle. So maybe I want to get something where my circle is. So that would be over at 2 plus 2.5, so 4.5. So ray 4.50. So that'll be where the center of my circle is. Now I still haven't put anything that shows where these holes are acting, and those are kind of a different feature. I'm starting to get a lot of construction lines on here that it's hard to keep track of what's what. So I'm going to go ahead and actually use just this random pink layer just to kind of organize lines a little bit more. And I'm going to make where these cutouts are with pink. Okay, so if I look at where those are, and you might have to go back to worksheets and just kind of count squares for this thing. I'm going to add a couple more dimensions here. So what I have is this will be coming out 4, dim continue, 4, and 4, 4, 8, 12. So that's kind of nice. And then I can also come over here. If you get those yellow exclamation points, that you can mess around with trying to reassociate it, but just ignore it. It won't print when you print it. Okay, so we have 4, 4, 4, and 2, 3, 2. So those are some more lines that we need to do, is where the cutouts at the base are. So here we go. I'm going to use pink and go for a ray. And we were at 4. So this is where one of the sides of the cutout is. And then 4, 4, 4, so 8, 0. So that's where kind of the top of that T is. And then on the other side, we were at 2, 3, 2. So I'm going to go ahead and let's see. If I start up my ray command, if you don't remember where you were, start up a command and then use these numbers at the bottom. So if this was 15, I'm going to have to go up to 17. So 17, 0. And then 17, 18, 19, 20. So the next point will be 20, 0. If you just write in those XY coordinates to begin with, that should be good. Okay, so that should give us a good starting point for kind of where all of our features are. I'm now going to switch over to our main outline layer and just use snapping to walk around the outline of this thing. While you're doing this, really make sure that you don't draw two different lines on top of one another. It makes it really hard to extrude and tell what's going on. So keep track of things and don't redraw the same area more than one time. Okay, P line, polyline, I'm going to connect my line segments together. So that's the difference between P line and line. And I'm going to go ahead and start at 0, 0 and walk around the edge of this chair. So I've got my ortho snap on, I've got all of my object snaps on, and I have all of my construction lines drawn so that I can just kind of walk around this thing. And let's see, so this is the bottom of my chair. Sometimes it can get confusing with so many colors and layers going on. Okay, there we go. And it looks like we're still on layer 0. So I'm going to click on this and move it back up to the correct layer. I used polyline, so that means everything is connected together. Oh, I was on my annotate tab, that's why. Okay, so there I've moved it to the right layer. If you really want to see it, I can go back and just turn off these other layers. So I am on layer 0, but you can see kind of what I am creating. So this is just the first rough outline. And then I'm going to be very careful not to retrace my steps. So I'm going to make this rectangle next. But this part of it I can start doing fairly quickly because I already have all of those grid lines in place. Okay, so the next little bit I have, maybe I'll just walk around the big rectangle and then add that last solid line for the ending piece of it. So P line again, and I'm going to walk around the edge. So you can see what I just did. And the last bit is going to be just a regular line right here. Okay, so now I have that first chunk done. While I'm here and familiar with it, maybe I want to fill in my hidden lines too. So if I switch over to the hidden layer, then I can go ahead and draw in over here. So there's one of my hidden lines. I might have to go in and change my dash style for that one. To redo any of the layer properties, just open that window up again. And yeah, let's reload and get a different hidden line. Something with a little bit bigger dashes to it. Okay, that's a little bit better. Now we can actually see that it's a dashed line. For that circle, we put the center point of that circle, but we did not do the two sides of it. And the two sides of it are the other two hidden lines here. So what we need to know is the diameter of that circle. So I can say dim, maybe I'll do just the radius. Usually you do a diameter if it's a full circle and just a radius for the arcs. So this would have a diameter of 2 and radius of 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the center line of the circle and I'm going to use the offset command for that radius. Okay, so here I go. I'm doing hidden lines again. And the first thing I will do is just where the center of my circle is. And then I'm going to use an offset. So this is the center. So I'm going to offset it by the radius, which was 1. So I will do it on one side, and then I will do it on the other side. And sometimes you'll leave in a center line, but a lot of times you won't. Okay, so there is the very first view. And hopefully that gives you the point. I don't want to make this video too long, but you can go around turning layers on and off. But the starting layer, start with your construction layer. And then as you walk through the rest of it, everything should be lined up. Okay, I'll go ahead and finish this up rather quickly here. Let me show you another trick. This is called a meter line or a folding line. And it's how you can kind of connect the top view to the lower right-hand view. And that is, we're going to extend the lines of both of these guys, and after that connect the corners. And all of the features from one side actually fold across those corners so that you can line them up with one another. So if you know where the circle is, or If you know where a cutout is, you can see them on both the top and they kind of fold over to that other right-hand side, which is kind of nice. So you see how hopefully these layers are really coming in handy to keep track of things, and you can leave notes for yourself, turn layers on and off to make sure that your outlines are in the right spots. And sometimes you don't need the layers. If you have just enough spots that you can snap features to, then you're good. And at the very end, once we start adding dimensions to this thing, you'll see if you have everything in the right position. And you can always go back and edit it. So, it's not the end of the world if one little line is out of place. Sometimes it's easier to move it, and sometimes it's a lot faster to just delete it and restart it. But keep turning the layers on and off. Make sure you know where you are. Have a piece of scratch paper in front of you for all of this so that you can see what you're headed towards. Half of it is becoming really familiar with the object that you're drawing. So know what all of the dimensions are, where everything is located, and that will go a long ways to being able to create it. And if drawing in XY coordinates will help, here's that meter line again. So we need to add in the last of our hidden lines here. So there's where our circle is going to go. So we can add the side of that cylinder over here with those meter lines. And then we also need to see where that cutout is with respect to the top. So there's the meter lines to show where that cutout is at the top, and we are almost there. Okay, the first one, getting used to all these commands, is of course going to take you time. But after a while, it can be fun. Put some music on and enjoy it.